The stench hit me before I even stepped inside the kitchen. It was sharp, sour, and unmistakably rotten. My daughter, Emily, was sitting quietly at the table, her tiny hands folded in her lap, trying hard not to gag. The plastic container in front of her had been opened just moments earlier, marked with a pink sticky note that read, "For the sweet girl, next door from Karen." I remember feeling something twist inside me. I rushed over and took one look. Mold-covered mashed potatoes, chicken that had turned gray, a cookie that crumbled into dust. My heart sank and then caught fire. Emily, who had always been taught to be polite, had already taken a bite of the cookie to not seem ungrateful. She smiled at me weakly, lips pale, eyes unsure. I wanted to scream. I stormed over to Karen's front porch, the container still in my hands. She opened the door with a smug smile like she'd been expecting me. "Is there a problem?" she asked sweetly. I held up the rotting food. "You gave this to my daughter. She's in a wheelchair, not a trash can." Her expression didn't change. No remorse. No surprise. Just one cold reply. She should be grateful. At least someone thought of her. The words hit harder than I expected. An ugly truth wrapped in fake generosity. I stood there, stunned, while she casually shut the door in my face. That moment rewired something in me. I knew it wasn't just about spoiled food. It wasn't just about Karen. It was about a system that let people like her smile while stepping on others. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this father wasn't going to let it slide. She had crossed the line. And she was about to learn that when you mess with a man's daughter, especially a daughter who's already fought battles life had no right to give her, you better be ready for war. 3 years ago, I moved into Rosewood Pines, a neighborhood that promised safety, clean streets, and a real sense of community. The brochure had a golden retriever, 2 kids riding bikes, and an American flag waving above white picket fences. It looked perfect. Too perfect. But back then, I needed perfect. My daughter Emily had just survived a life-changing car accident that left her paralyzed from the waist down. She was 7. Her mother, my wife, didn't make it. That wreck shattered everything. And when the hospital bills swallowed what was left of our savings, I had no choice but to sell the house and find a smaller, quieter place to start over. Rosewood Pines seemed like that place. The first time we drove through the neighborhood gates, Emily's eyes lit up. "It looks like a movie," she said. I smiled and told her, "Then we'll write our own ending here." I meant it. I believed in second chances. I believed in healing. What I didn't realize was that sometimes behind the clean sidewalks and garden gnomes are people who smile with their teeth and judge with their eyes. At first, it was subtle. Karen, the HOA president, welcomed us with a brochure and a carefully rehearsed smile. She said, "It's wonderful to see diversity in the neighborhood." I didn't know if she meant me or Emily in her wheelchair or both. Maybe neither. But I brushed it off. Emily was happy. We unpacked. We planted a rose bush in the front yard. We added a small ramp to the porch, just enough for her to roll in and out without needing help. That ramp was the first thing Karen commented on. "I hope you submitted that to the HOA," she said on her next visit, smiling while handing me a violation notice folded neatly in a pamphlet. "We just like to keep things uniform." I apologized and promised to fix it. I didn't want trouble. Emily had already been through enough. Every day, I helped her with schoolwork, therapy, and rebuilding her confidence. She had to relearn life, how to brush her teeth from a seated position, how to push herself uphill, how to deal with classmates who stared too long or asked the wrong questions. But she never complained. Not once. She just kept smiling. That little smile of hers, it kept me going. A month later, another notice came. This time about her wheelchair ramp's color. Too bright. Then came the complaints about toys left near the driveway, and the small wind chime on our back porch, and the decorative lights Emily loved to hang for every holiday, each one followed by a neatly printed letter sign, sincerely the HOA. But it was always Karen. Her name wasn't on every letter, but her fingerprints were all over them. Still, I said nothing. I figured it was easier to just fix things, comply, and avoid attention. That's what they wanted, for people like us to stay quiet, stay small. But Emily was growing up. She noticed. She saw the way Karen would wave to other neighbors and walk past us like we weren't there. She noticed how other kids were warned not to play too close to that house during community events. It stung, but I kept assuring her, people just need time. Then came the bake sale. The neighborhood hosted one every spring, a weekend where kids and parents came together, sold cookies and lemonade, and donated the proceeds to local causes. Emily wanted to participate. She loved baking. We spent 2 days prepping homemade brownies. She mixed the batter herself, despite her limited arm strength. We set up our table, decorated it with handmade signs, and even added a little donation jar for spinal injury research. But not a single person stopped at our table. Not one. Karen had set up her own table nearby. Hers had a crowd, as usual. When one mother accidentally walked toward ours, Karen leaned over and whispered something to her. The woman looked at Emily, then turned away. That was the moment I knew this wasn't passive exclusion anymore. It was active. Still, Emily said, maybe next year. The turning point came when Emily came home from school with a gift bag. She looked excited. Miss Karen gave this to me, she said. Inside was a plastic-wrapped lunch container and a note. Thought you'd enjoy something warm after a long day. I was surprised. Maybe I'd misjudged her. Maybe it was a peace offering. I let my guard down. That was my mistake. The food smelled a little off when I opened it, but Emily was already taking a bite from the cookie. Then she paused, frowned, and pushed the plate away. It tastes weird. I took a closer look. The chicken was discolored. The potatoes had patches of green. The cookie had a bitter, chemical smell. I threw it all in the trash and rushed to her side. She was pale, sweating, and shaking. The doctor confirmed mild food poisoning. Thankfully, it wasn't severe, but for someone with her fragile condition, even mild was dangerous. I didn't tell Emily what I suspected, but I knew. Karen had sent that food, not as kindness, but as a statement, a message. And when I confronted her, her words didn't just confirm it, they ignited something in me. She should be grateful. Grateful for what? For being tolerated? For breathing in a neighborhood that only smiled if you matched its mold? That night, I sat in the dark with Emily asleep beside me. My anger burned hot, not just at Karen, but at myself for staying silent. I had tried to keep the peace, but peace doesn't come when you bow to bullies. It comes when you stand, for your child, for what's right. And so I stood up, and everything that came next, Karen never saw it coming. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room staring at the HOA welcome packet, the one they handed me when I first moved in, full of rules about how to be a good neighbor. Maintain community aesthetics. Avoid disturbance. Promote a family-friendly environment. It was all a mask, a fake smile over a rotten system, just like the food Karen had given my daughter. I couldn't let this go. Not anymore. The next morning, I marched to the HOA office with the food container, the note, and Emily's medical report in hand. The receptionist looked startled, but before she could say anything, Karen stepped out from the back office. "Oh," she said, "is there a problem again?" That word again, like I was the one always causing trouble. I held out the container and calmly explained what happened. Her smile didn't waver. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "We'll review this as a board. Please submit a written complaint and allow 14 business days for a response." 14 days? Emily could have died. That's when I realized I wasn't just dealing with one cruel woman. I was dealing with an entire structure that allowed her to thrive. The HOA wasn't ignoring me. They were protecting one of their own. I wrote the complaint anyway, but I also started digging. I read every HOA policy document, every bylaw, every amendment. I requested minutes from past HOA meetings. Some were redacted. Others were missing. A few had Karen's name written in bold across nearly every page. She wasn't just a board member, she was the board. She handpicked the rules. She voted unopposed. The HOA meetings were more performance than governance, just a formality to rubber stamp her decisions. Meanwhile, the retaliation began. Within a week, I received 3 separate violation notices, one for Emily's ramp again, non-compliant design, another for a weed growing near our rose bush, it was lavender. The third accused me of noise pollution for excessive wheeling noises from Emily's chair. It didn't stop there. Neighbors who once waved politely now avoided eye contact. One even crossed the street to avoid passing our yard. At first, I thought maybe I was being paranoid. But then Emily said something that chilled me. "Dad, why did Mrs. Parker tell her daughter I'm sick in the head?" I didn't have an answer, but I had a mission now. One night, a friend from work, an IT guy named Marcus, came over. I told him what was happening. He listened silently, then said, "I've got a buddy who used to work security for HOA data systems. Let me ask around." Within days, he got back to me with something big. Someone from the HOA's internal email system had circulated a message after my complaint. The subject line read, "Problem family escalation." It was sent from Karen's account. The message suggested other board members document as many code violations as possible to build a case for enforcement action. It also referenced me as someone with a likely vendetta and warned them not to engage directly. That email confirmed what I suspected. This wasn't negligence. It was organized harassment. I printed the email, highlighted Karen's name, and placed it in a file with everything else. Photos of the spoiled food, Emily's hospital report, video footage from our doorbell camera showing Karen dropping off the container, HOA letters, and now internal communications. I knew I needed allies. I knocked on the doors of 5 neighbors who had also received Karen's HOA wrath over the years. Some didn't answer. Others peeked out and then closed the blinds. But one, Mr. Walker, a retired veteran, opened up. She fined me $200 for my American flag being half an inch too low, he said. I paid it just to shut her up. We sat on his porch, and I showed him everything. He listened, and at the end, he asked, "What do you need from me?" That question was the beginning of something. The next day, Mr. Walker and I spoke to another neighbor, then another. Soon, a small group of residents began quietly sharing their stories. One woman had been fined for suspicious-looking guests. Her niece was biracial. Another man was harassed over his son's basketball hoop. Karen had created a kingdom ruled by fear and wrapped in paperwork. But now we had momentum. I began documenting everything. I launched a private Facebook group, Voices of Rosewood. It grew faster than I expected. Residents shared images of violations, emails, and fines. They vented years of frustration. They thanked me for speaking up. Then one night, a message came that changed everything. It was from someone anonymous using a burner account. They sent me a document, a scanned copy of HOA meeting notes that were never made public. It detailed a closed-door meeting where Karen proposed removing problematic residents who didn't uphold neighborhood values. My name was on that list, so were 5 others, including a wheelchair icon next to Emily's. That was my line in the sand. I posted the document, redacted names for safety, on the Facebook group. The response was explosive. Comments poured in. People were outraged. Someone forwarded the post to a local news station. But not everyone was happy. Karen responded the next morning with a cease and desist letter taped to my door. Defamation. Violation of community harmony. Harassment of HOA members. She even threatened legal action. She was scared, but it was too late. The story was out. That night, Emily and I sat at our kitchen table. She looked tired, not from the illness, but from the weight of being treated like she didn't belong. "Did I do something wrong, Dad?" she asked softly. I knelt beside her and said, "No, sweetheart, you did everything right, and now it's time the world sees that." I helped her record a video, just her voice, a black screen with captions. She spoke from the heart. "My name is Emily. I live in a neighborhood where people smile at you, but not really. I got sick from food someone gave me, and when my dad tried to protect me, we were treated like we were the problem. I'm not the problem. I'm just a kid." I uploaded the video anonymously. Within 24 hours, it had 87,000 views. Then 200,000. The hashtags hashtag justice for Emily and hashtag HOA harassment began trending locally. Karen tried to deny everything, but the world was watching now. By the end of the week, the video had passed 500,000 views. Major local news outlets picked up the story. Headlines read, "Disabled girl targeted by HOA, community leader under fire, rotten food scandal in suburbia sparks outrage, child's voice goes viral after alleged harassment by HOA president Karen's carefully manicured reputation began to crack." She scrambled to save face, organizing a sudden community potluck to foster unity. She even posted a selfie holding a tray of lasagna on the HOA's Facebook page with the caption, "We all make mistakes, but Rosewood heals together, 2 hearts." But no one was buying it anymore. Comments poured in under the post, calling her out. Residents who had stayed silent began to speak up. An elderly widow named Mrs. Donahue shared how Karen threatened to report her for declining mental health because she forgot to mow her lawn for 2 weeks. A father revealed his autistic son was shamed for making too much noise in their backyard. Karen had called it disturbing the peace. The potluck flopped. Barely 5 people showed up, all Karen's closest friends on the HOA board. Meanwhile, Emily's video was now international. Disability advocates, parenting bloggers, and legal analysts all weighed in. A former HOA board member from a different state even tweeted, "This is textbook abuse of power," that HOA needs to be investigated and the president removed immediately. But here's the thing, Karen wasn't done. She was wounded, and wounded animals bite harder. On the Monday after the media storm, I received an official notice of eviction proceedings. The reason? Violation of community standards and safety protocols. Noncompliance with HOA behavior codes. Behavior codes? It was absurd and unlawful. HOA boards couldn't evict homeowners, especially not under such flimsy grounds. But the letter came with an intimidating tone and 3 signatures from HOA board members, Karen and 2 others, her longtime loyalists. I wasn't afraid, but Emily was. She came to me that night and whispered, "Are we going to have to leave again?" And I promised her, for the first time in months, without a hint of doubt, no, not this time. I contacted a civil rights attorney. She took one look at the case and said, "This could become landmark." She filed an emergency injunction to block the HOA's notice and began preparing for legal proceedings, not just for us, but for several other victims in the community. That's when we discovered the real bombshell. While prepping for the case, my lawyer subpoenaed HOA financial records. It took a week to process, but when they came in, I sat in her office flipping through the documents, page after page of miscellaneous expenses, community development fees, and beautification projects. Then we found it. A $12,000 invoice paid to a consultant company owned by Karen's cousin for community engagement services. Another $8,500 for accessibility improvements that were never made, supposedly for a ramp that Emily had never even seen. Tens of thousands of dollars of HOA fees siphoned off through fake projects, most of them rubber-stamped by the board. It wasn't just harassment anymore. It was fraud. I posted a redacted summary of the findings on the Voices of Rosewood page. It exploded. People were furious, not just about the bullying anymore, but about their money. Their HOA dues had been stolen. Their trust manipulated. That same night, someone from the news media showed up at Karen's door, mic in hand. She refused to answer. Her porch light went off. 2 hours later, she posted a long-winded Facebook status. These attacks are part of a coordinated campaign to discredit years of service and dedication to this neighborhood. I have always acted in good faith. No one believed her. The comment section was a bloodbath. The next morning, someone egged her house. I didn't condone it. In fact, I posted a message to the community asking everyone to stay civil and lawful. "We're better than her," I wrote. "We fight with truth, not hate." Still, it was clear her grip on power was breaking. The HOA board called an emergency town hall meeting for the first time in over 2 years. It was held in the community center, and the line to get in wrapped around the block. I brought Emily with me. She wore her favorite blue hoodie and held my hand tight. The room was packed. Neighbors who had never spoken to me before nodded in support. A few gave us hugs. Karen sat at the front with the board, face tense, voice rehearsed. She began with, "Let's all remember that emotions are high, but facts matter," but no one was listening. I stood up and spoke for 10 minutes, laid out everything: the spoiled food, the harassment, the fraudulent invoices, the retaliation. I had evidence, files, documents, even signed statements from other neighbors. My voice shook with rage, but never cracked. Then Emily raised her hand, and when I asked her if she wanted to speak, she wheeled forward and took the microphone. She looked around the room, then simply said, "I didn't ask to be different. I just wanted to live here. And I didn't think grown-ups would be so mean." But my dad stood up, and I'm proud of him. The entire room fell silent. Then someone started clapping, then more. Then the entire room was on its feet. Karen tried to respond, but the board cut her off. A motion was raised to hold a vote of no confidence. It passed, overwhelmingly. Karen was suspended from the board pending legal investigation. The other members who backed her quietly resigned that week. The HOA was shaken to its foundation, and now change was inevitable. But the fight wasn't over, because now it was time to go beyond neighborhood drama. It was time to bring justice. 3 days after the emergency HOA meeting, I got a call that would change everything. It was from Detective Lyles, a local fraud investigator who had seen the news coverage and was now acting on the formal complaint my lawyer had filed. "We've opened a preliminary inquiry into HOA misappropriation of funds," he said, "and we'd like you to come down to the station with your evidence." I brought everything: the invoices, the emails, the video of Karen delivering the spoiled food, the cease and desist letter, the anonymous document listing problem families, the financial breakdown Marcus and I had assembled cross-referenced with HOA fee hikes over the last 2 years. I even included a hard copy of Emily's video testimony. Detective Lyles spent nearly 2 hours going through it all in silence. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, looked me in the eye, and said, "We have enough to move forward. And I'll be honest, this is bigger than we thought." Karen's abuse of power wasn't just an isolated act of cruelty, it was part of a pattern of fraudulent practices and discrimination that could qualify under state-level civil rights violations. Lyles informed me that they'd already begun contacting other HOA members and subpoenaing bank records. My case had opened the floodgates. The same day, the local NBC affiliate ran an exclusive segment titled "Disability Discrimination and Deception." The HOA president who crossed the line, the story aired Emily's now famous quote, "I didn't ask to be different. I just wanted to live here." Alongside footage of the neighborhood, HOA documentation, and financial discrepancies. It was professional, unbiased, and devastatingly thorough. Karen was done. The very next morning, a neighbor texted me a photo. Karen's house was for sale. A hastily erected "for sale by owner" sign stood crooked on her lawn. A moving van pulled into her driveway by noon. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't post a farewell message. She vanished like a shadow at sunrise. But what followed was even more remarkable. The HOA board announced a full restructuring. An outside auditing firm was hired. A new community charter was proposed, designed around fairness, inclusion, and transparency. I was asked to help draft it. Me, the problem tenant. But the best moment came 1 week later at Rosewood Pines' first ever Community Inclusion Day. The playground was buzzing with families, kids, music. All of it genuine this time. No pretenses. No hidden agendas. Emily was there, front and center, holding the ribbon at the ceremony to open a brand new wheelchair-accessible garden path, named in her honor, Emily's Walk. When she cut the ribbon, the entire crowd erupted in applause. Some clapped. Some cried. I did both. And just when I thought I had seen everything, Detective Lyles called again. "Charges have been filed," he said. "Fraud, misuse of funds, discrimination. Karen's being investigated on multiple counts. There may be state and civil penalties." He paused, then added, "You didn't just stand up for your daughter. You stood up for an entire community." It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a correction, A long overdue one. Later that night, as I pushed Emily's wheelchair up the new path through the garden, surrounded by laughter and blooming lavender, she looked up at me and said, "It feels different now. It feels like home." And in that moment, I knew we hadn't just won. We had reclaimed our place. The storm was over, but its echo lingered. Even with Karen gone, her presence haunted the neighborhood like a bad smell that took time to clear. The fear she instilled didn't vanish overnight. For months after her departure, residents still whispered when talking about her. Some avoided HOA meetings altogether, unsure whether change would truly last. Others, especially the families who had silently suffered for years, started to speak more openly, cautiously peeling off the armor they had worn to survive. For Emily and me, healing came slowly, one peaceful morning at a time. The legal case moved forward quietly in the background. My attorney kept me informed. State investigators confirmed Karen's misuse of HOA funds and were actively pursuing civil penalties. While a criminal conviction was uncertain, the damage to her reputation and finances was permanent. She had become the face of everything wrong with unchecked power in private communities, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared to walk past her old house. But some damage couldn't be undone. Emily still flinched when unfamiliar adults knocked on our door. She had recurring stomach issues for a while, partly from the food incident, partly from the anxiety that followed. Her school counselor helped, and so did time. We kept therapy regular but lighthearted, always with a reward waiting after, her favorite cafe milkshake or a walk through Emily's walk. One day during a quiet Sunday brunch, she asked, "Do you think there are more Karens out there?" I nodded. There probably are, but there are more good people too. And now we know how to deal with the bad ones. That moment felt like a turning point, not just for her, but for me. I had spent so long trying to avoid conflict, to keep my head down and keep my daughter safe by staying silent. But silence doesn't protect you. It only empowers the people who thrive in the shadows. Rosewood Pines had changed too. The HOA now included elected representatives from different backgrounds. A rotating community committee gave everyone a voice. Violations had to be reviewed by a neutral third party before being issued. The ramp in front of our house? Still there. Now painted bright sky blue with Emily's hand-painted butterflies on the side. No more notices. Mr. Walker, the old veteran, became HOA vice president. He always gave Emily a salute when she rolled by, and she returned it every time with a grin. And then came the letter. 6 months after the last news story aired, I received a handwritten letter in our mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a folded note that read, "You made me think. I didn't see her as a little girl before, just a problem. I was wrong. I'm sorry." It wasn't signed. I didn't need it to be. Even if it wasn't from Karen, and I still doubt it was, it meant something. Proof that standing up changes more than just laws or leadership. It changes hearts. That's what I wanted for Emily. Not just safety, not just justice, but hope. And now, for the first time in years, we had it. In the end, this story wasn't about a rotten meal or a cruel neighbor. It was about visibility, about what happens when people who are easy to ignore are finally seen. For so long, I believed that staying quiet would protect my daughter, that being polite, cooperative, invisible even, would keep trouble away. But silence didn't protect us. It only gave power to people like Karen, those who mistake control for order and cruelty for community standards. Emily taught me something I'll never forget. You don't have to be loud to be strong. You just have to be heard. She didn't fight back with anger or revenge. She spoke softly, truthfully, and the world listened. That's what shook the ground beneath Karen's feet. Not fury, but honesty. The path we walk now, Emily's walk, isn't just named after her. It's built on her courage. A reminder that real strength doesn't always look like protest signs or courtrooms. Sometimes it's a little girl refusing to disappear. Sometimes it's a father finally realizing that protecting your child doesn't mean hiding them. It means standing beside them when they take the spotlight. So, to anyone out there dealing with silent battles, quiet discrimination, or hidden cruelty behind suburban fences, let this be your spark. Raise your voice, even if it trembles, because the people who try to make you feel small, they're terrified of what happens when you decide not to shrink anymore. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, hopeful, or just a little more aware, then you're exactly who this channel is for. Subscribe to the HOA stories where real people, real pain, and real courage come to light. Because behind every perfect lawn and painted fence, there's a story someone doesn't want told. Drop a comment below. Speaking Head, have you ever faced injustice in your neighborhood? Or were you ever made to feel small for simply existing? Let's bring those stories forward. Let's build a community that doesn't stay silent. Oncoming Fist, your voice matters. Your story matters. And here at the HOA Stories, we make sure it's heard.